classic example of what exactly happened in Hong Kong. Hong Kong, I used to work for Hong Kong Tourism Board, so this is from my prior experience I'm sharing. Hong Kong used to be the highest number of arrivals in Hong Kong, 60 million, 30 million of which were Chinese mainlanders who would cross the border. Now it's a ghost town, and the tourism board is scrambling to get visitors again into Hong Kong. Classic example on how a country itself can also have this kind of a limitation or a problem. So being an OTA, being a supplier, you should always look at diversification. So yeah, I mean, Headout does content a little bit differently than what Seatrip, Klook, Kitty Guide, people are doing. We are very selective on who we work with, and we would like to work with that partner to grow business with that partner first, before moving on and finding new partners. And we'll only work on products that has higher commission levels. Like we will never sell a SIM card. In Klook, if you see, there is a whole vertical of SIM cards. You can buy a lot of SIM cards. Yes, it helps the traveler, but it doesn't help the company. That's why, I'm glad to say we are profitable as a company, right? So in these times, the strategy will be to contract more suppliers for new countries and build content, have more frameworks ready, and go out there when the time is right to go put marketing dollars behind our products. Yeah, that's for us. Yes.
Yeah. I think that's one of the key differences between Expedia and Headout. So our approach is we're an open marketplace. So over the last year, we've been expanding out our supply portfolio. I think we're up to nearly 200,000 activities, and we try and open up partnerships with all of the partners that want to work with us can distribute on our platform, and you can do that with a self-service model for the most part. So. And again, my link is in the on my card if you want to come and grab one, or in my Arival app. I've listed it there if you're not working with us already. So, so with Expedia, it's really we're a global brand with 50, 60 different brands across the world. And our sort of focus is to make your products relevant to the Expedia customers. So it's not as much about Googling and trying to find out where you're going to get your direct customers. For us, it's really about matching to the hundreds of millions of people that travel with us every year, book flights and hotels. And what we're trying to do is make their whole journey connected and building in activities to give them more relevance.
So the difference between you guys, right? So marketplace meaning anybody here can go in and load their products, and you don't move their they order the products. The algorithm determines where the products show up. And there might be
things like price, reviews. There's a long list. Not all of it do we disclose. It depends on the point of sale, what market you're actually promoting your products in, what brand. So we're trying to make that activity that we're cross-selling to our customers relevant, depending on the place that they're finding you throughout the ecosystem. So.
Yeah, I always think marketplace, because now that we have pure marketplaces in this space, I think it's the same as Google. I think you're optimizing your product. It's the same as optimizing your product, your website on Google. Obviously, 5-star reviews are going to get you higher up on the Expedia algorithm. Why wouldn't they? Absolutely. I'm sure price is a factor. I'm sure quality of content and images. I don't know how much of this you publish, but these are things that if I was Expedia, I would want the best products at the highest margin with the highest reviews at the top of the list.
Yeah, exactly. We have a checklist of great content. We have a lot of tutorials and teams working with our partners to try and help them optimize that. So content, images are really important. Video, you can upload a video on our site to help our customers understand what it is. That's a big growing trend, of course, that we're all aware of. Price, availability, there's a lot of talk around booking cutoffs. That's really important to us. I was just sharing with the gentleman from Reykjavik to run a test on our site. As one really simple example, just go and look at Reykjavik for June for a summer holiday. A lot of our customers are buying with us many months in advance. That's one of the benefits of listing with Expedia. You may have 500, 600 activities to sell, and that's all about matching the right experience to that customer, but there's a lot of availability there. if you then switch that and come on to our mobile apps, because you're in Reykjavik and you're looking for things to do, that list can be really short. You can have less than 10 things because of the cutoff. So we have a list of best things or best practices that you can do to try and compete and attract customers in our marketplace. So if you don't have great booking cutoffs, you're just not going to show up for a customer in destination. Kirsten was sharing before that a big percentage of, or no, I think you were saying 80% of our customers are still booking offline, right? Yeah. So customers that are in destination, that are Expedia customers that are using our mobile app, that's still a small percentage, but if you're not there, by just tweaking the system and using those, then you're not even giving the customer a chance to learn about your experience and book it. So yeah, there's a list, and I'm happy to share where you can find some of that information as well on our blog.
Well, yeah, the Expedia blog is great. I don't know if you guys, whoever works with Expedia, there's tons of good information on working with them, working with products.
So in-house. So because we also have something called affiliates, and Headout makes its own affiliates, right? So if top selling city, for example, is Rome for Headout, right? So, and in Rome, if the top selling product is La Sagrada, then we will have a micro brand or an affiliate which is called lasagrada.com that is owned by Headout, right? So that's how we drive our marketing. So that's why it's very important for us to write the content ourselves. But that being said, it's a huge load on the team to do that, and that's why we are not in as many cities as Globe or other companies, right? Because the content curation takes such a long time. And that's why I'm very curious to understand from you guys, right? I mean, to see, that's why I asked the question about the content.
Yeah.
Right. So how do we know which content is necessary and can be duplicated, and which content helps us, like undo the canonical tags and still keep our ranking.
Right.
Right. So that's one of the key things that we do in Headout. And another thing that we look at is categories. So some companies, like if you look at Ctrip, Cloak, etc., they have like listed categories, and any city you drop into, they have the same categories. Tours and activities, theme park tickets, transfers, Wi-Fi and SIM card. Right? For Headout, we have done away with that. So in Dubai for Headout, Burj Khalifa in itself can be a category. So any product which has Burj Khalifa in the product will be in that category. So Burj Khalifa, whichever floor you want to go to, plus a transfer, plus a meal, then the guests can choose whatever they want. That's not something that other OTAs have done, because in other OTAs like Cloak, you can find Burj Khalifa, 10 of them, similar ones, supplied by 10 different people. So the business that gets to the supplier thins down, but there are many suppliers. We also have many suppliers, but we work in a diamond system. So that means one supplier can supply many products, one product can be supplied by many suppliers. But in the back end, it's a full stack. So what we show to the customer is actually the curated product with the best content that we write, and whichever it matches from in the back end is actually shown to the customer. So that's the difference.
Yeah.
And the discussion about content still exists.
You just need Magpie. Magpie will take care of all of your content troubles.
You mentioned Burj Khalifa and La Sagrada, and these are big attractions. They're smaller attractions that we buy from Resdi, and they're one of the biggest partners that we have. We work with many of them. We work with your competitors as well. I would like to shout out about Global Tix, Singapore-based company. The fundamental difference about how we work with them and you guys is that if we work with Global Tix, I was sharing with Michael earlier, we don't have to contract the supplier. Because if I'm using Global Tix as my channel manager, the supplier contract comes to me as it is. I am still free to contract the supplier for a better rate and still use the Global Tix system just for clearing my tickets. I think it's very well done in Asia, but yeah, it has not caught up in this part of the world yet, right? Because maybe contracting in this part of the world is a bit more complicated, and they don't care about rules that much in Asia, getting to court and all that. No, they don't. It's still open.
Right. We should actually have a discussion maybe this afternoon about what a channel manager is and what it isn't, and the definition of, because everyone I speak to is just really confused about what's what and who's who and how it all fits together. Maybe that's a later discussion.
It's to my point before, I think that as we get more suppliers online, then the different layers in between, you talked about some of the, if if you work with Viator, for instance, you know, they're selling to the end consumers, but Viator also provide a lot of supply as a wholesale level, effectively, into a lot of travel agents. You know, you talk about Global Ticks having a different arrangement. So there's these different layers starting to emerge now because you've got that critical mass of supply online to be able to do that. So yeah, that's a whole conversation to get into channel management. But I think that hopefully you guys would agree that it's definitely easier to do business when you're working with a supplier that's online, because it's easier for you guys to do. And we've seen the difference in terms of approach facing consumers between your two businesses, which is a really neat sort of example of think about what the OTA is doing for you, think about which customer they're going to talk best to. But I think it goes without saying, but we should probably say it, that like work with a tech platform like a Resdy, like a Peak, Fair Harbour, Boken, whoever, because it makes it so much easier to work with these guys.
Yeah, and I think what I'll add to that, what I've seen is that our partners are just so confused and in fear of just starting, and that point was made before. So we try and support where we can, but what I would say is just get started.
Yeah.
All of the res tech companies offer great YouTube videos that will explain how their systems work. Everyone has free demos. It takes 30 minutes or 1 hour to set that up and start to learn, but just get listed. I see the benefits of that. I see the extra sales, and I see a lot of pain reduced, right, in terms of getting emails and trying to update your inventory on lots of different platforms. We know that there are challenges as well, but there's only so many things that we can solve at one time. But the partners that work with a res tech definitely succeed better in our platform, and it's better for them as well. So.
And one other thing I would just say, we talk about so much being offline, it doesn't necessarily mean that the minute you start using a res platform that all your bookings can be online. You still might get 8 or 9 of bookings out of 10 from walk-in, but what you've got is, because you've got that live availability, or because you're taking those phone bookings, for instance, because you've got live availability, you can suddenly, you've got your foot in the door, if you will, of online. You can start that shift. You can start thinking more about your website, and then gradually just open up that change to be able to take more and more online bookings. So, you know, we still have customers that use Resdy, and 90% of their bookings, they're still taking over the phone, still taking walk-in, but they're able to, you know, take the payment at the door or just input it into the system. And it means that you've got a system of record, you're able to capture kind of your CRM, effectively capture your customer records to be able to communicate them, and just at least start getting the advantage of the platform, and then obviously be able to trade with, you know, there's obviously, we're talking specifically about OTAs here, but you know, your local and destination partners, whoever it may be, start to work in a more online way.
And 15 years, it was only mainly curated. So as an operator standpoint, and I talked to a few of you already yesterday and today, I feel like a lot of you are at the beginning still, where you say, okay, I work with TripAdvisor, or maybe 2 or 3, and where do I go from here? So I'm not gonna lie, it is some, you know, investment of time you need to do, but what I could suggest to anyone who's just starting off is to pick, there's probably like the 5 ones that are always in the media that are the marketplaces out there. Expedia is one of them. Pick 2 or 3 of the marketplaces, and just as Dom said, sign up and follow the guidelines. And on that end, on the marketplace side, what you will realize is that it's gonna take some time to actually follow these guidelines and get to a position where your product gets higher and higher and higher, and you finally see some value coming out of it. But at that point, when Expedia or whoever's out there realizes you have a good product in that market, you also might become having a market manager where you work much closer with them and can grow that business. At the same time, reach out to few curated ones as well, because they are the ones that are kind of more tentative to, you know, look at what you need, or if you're a unique product. We as a Hop on Hop Off tour have never been in that position where I could pick and choose that much. I just like had to load our product on all the platforms, and we want to work with everyone. But just look at having a good combination of a handful of, you know, the marketplaces where it's easy to just sign up, load your product, see what you can get out of it, but follow the guidelines. Expedia is actually quite great on having all this information, what the tour description should be, what your tour title should be, and then pick a few curated ones which are in your market or more regional, and then ask them, what do you actually need from us? Because I've been also working with Haddock trying to get something started in San Francisco, but they always come back to me and say, listen, we don't want you to put work into this right now because we're not ready to actually focus on San Francisco, which I appreciate so much, because at that point I'm like, okay, we're not gonna waste our time until we know we're ready. So yeah, do a combination if you can, and that's good starting point, I would say.
And, you said it, but they said think before you OTA. And that was, absolutely what Jessica's saying there. You know, divert, and I think Joe was saying before, diversify. Don't work with just one. Think about doing, which ones you want to expand to, but think about the ones that are right for you. Think about what they're going to do for you, and don't just go for 5 that are going to do the same thing. They're all just fighting each other to spend on Google for the same customer. Spread that around and think about how they're going to reach. If you're thinking of the world and you know where you want your customers to come from, think if you're allocating the job, if you will, who's doing what for you, who's looking after Asia, who's thinking about the US.
So actually, we can count, right? For Asia, it's Citro. Cividades is all for the Spanish-speaking markets. America is Viator, Expedia. Europe is Get Your Guide and us, right? And then Indonesia, Southeast is Traveloka.
Yeah.
Right. So you should work with all of them.
Yeah.
To be
and that's where again ResTech comes in, because that you can't work with so many if you haven't got the tools to be able to do so, because you're just overlaying administration and email challenges to be able to communicate. So that's why we connect to all of those.
Yeah, totally agree.
Sorry, what?
We're gonna own everyone.
A different audience. So Airbnb is very much focused on individual community people offering like, hey, I offer a surfing class. ResTech systems typically work with real businesses like yourself. So there's not as much overlap. Even though you would like to sell on Airbnb, Airbnb actually doesn't want Big Bus or other companies on Airbnb. They're very specific about their brand, and so that's why also the connectivity is not as interesting to them.
So you don't call them an OTA? Airbnb is not an OTA.
Well, it's interesting. I think what I would say is that they're a great outlet for experiences, and as Oscar said, they work really well for those really personalised experience. So that I might work in the bank in the week, but I take people on a food tour around my city on a Saturday, so it's perfect for that. And then generally, if that business gets momentum and it becomes their real business, then they might switch to a Res platform. But what's interesting with Airbnb experiences, and they're based in San Francisco, obviously where Peak are based. I'm sure that Oscar talks to them as we have. They're not looking to connect into other systems yet to enable that distribution. But if we look across to how they worked on the lodging side, when that system matured, they did start to take content. So I suspect it may be something that comes down the line, but at the moment they're really getting this focus on that really personalized experience for that local area and filling out content. I get on planes a lot, and so I go to somewhere and I try and do experiences, and sometimes I look at Airbnb experiences and there's like 5 things to do in that city. And so I think they're working on just fleshing that out first, and then they'll think about how they can broaden it.
I think that's the future. Everyone wants a personalized experience. All the clients want this, what Airbnb is offering. And everything will go in that direction, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean no one wants a mass popular tour, with
I think
hundreds
what
people.
will happen, and technology will undoubtedly do this, is that it won't be as simple as, does this business work in travel? Think about who has the relationship with a traveller. It could be the credit card business, it can be the place they book their flights, the airline, it could be the hotel chain or the OTA. And what technology will do, it will empower all of those businesses to be able to, we see this with Facebook might be a business that starts getting more and more into travel in terms of brands. Because if you've got the relationship with the customer who's actually making the trip, and you've got the connectivity solution to provide the experiences as bookable, then everyone can be. We sort of work in our business with this idea that you might hit a time where there's an Uber of OTAs, if you will. So if you're a student, you might have the afternoon off, and you can go down and on your app or your iPad, be a great source of advice down by the harbour or something, and sell 6, 10, 40 experiences and make yourself, a few $1,000s before you go back for your evening classes. That's for me an inevitability. It's just we've got to get technology moving, adopted by all, solve some of the big basic problems that you guys are trying to solve today of just getting a differentiated product, and then I think it will explode, and say anyone could be an OTA, if you will.
Yeah, you mentioned Facebook. I think in the end, our own lives will become experiences for some other people, you know. some other man's life, you know, and live,
Well, I mean, that
live
already
his life
happens.
for
You look
a
at
while.
certain YouTube channels, certain people are that, you know.
I think a major is OTAs, which are hundreds of them, and you can go crazy uploading stuff and whatnot. They all work different. For example, Expedia has a specific target group, which are people of a certain age, usually older, right? Well, older, I mean. Whereas Airbnb, for example, has a very funky, hippie, I want the guy for myself type of thing going on. So I believe as an advice that all of us, you have to understand all of them first. Develop a distribution strategy that makes work, you know, it works for your business. For example, are you able to do the tours yourself every day? Is it your face that people are going to see? Or do you have a team of guides that, depending on what day the tourist book, is going to be able to go on that tour? And before you start uploading all your content and whatnot to all of these OTA, you first understand them and then work with them.
Yeah, there is a new option. So it's not only about me, my picture there, but I can say sorry today I'm not available, but my colleague is co-hosting, and that's how you can skip the trick of personalizing your experience.
This is interesting because when they started, I was actually one of the pilots and what they wanted, and it was a very exclusive thing, you know, basically they wanted to meet the chef or the winemaker that's impossible to do, you know, for 50 euros as well, you know. And now they've noticed that there's not a lot of traction in doing that, and now you can co-host because it's the reality of the business is just that's impossible to do it every day, you know.
It's exhausting, not impossible. It's exhausting.
It is exhausting.
They tickets is now only doing attractions. They're moving out of the tour market. So my assumption is that tickets will be the attractions, and Airbnb will start moving into the tours. I think we all know they're not doing very well in this market, but I think we all probably know that they will do well. They're pretty aggressive company.
And I think it's important to note, you know, we've talked before about this journey of learning. You know, you guys are doing it as operators, whether you've been doing it for 60 years in your family or whether you've started doing it in the last year or so. And the reality is this is such a complex space of the different type of experiences. You know, the regional complexity, the global situations that go on around fires and volcanoes and viruses, and all the different evolving habits of the traveller themselves. And you know, we think it's hard trying to do it for one business. These guys are trying to do it across the world, across loads of different businesses. And so it's just as much a journey of learning for the OTAs today. And I think that, you know, that it's easy to forget that because you look at a big business and assume they know everything about the industry. And it's like, no one knows everything about this industry because it's too complex to do so, and it's changing at such rapid pace.
And I think also the industry still has maturity. You know, if you maturity to gain. So if you look at, I come from the multi-day touring industry. We used to talk about attachment rates, right? So when we would work with a partner, it's like for every airline ticket that's sold for a leisure trip, what's the attachment rate of buying a multi-day tour? If you look at the attachment rate of tours and experiences to everyone who takes a leisure trip, it's tiny. There's still a huge amount of growth within the industry to gain. These guys are going to be a big driver of how we achieve that. But as an industry, we've still got a lot of growth that we need to eke out in terms of that just being the standard of what people do when they take a leisure trip, right? I think someone mentioned it before. It's like, I booked my flight, I booked my hotel. A lot of people stop there. What we need is that, you know, I then book my tours and activities and experiences, and that's where the growth is going to come. It's, you know, it's not so much, I think one of the reasons why there's so much sharing, to your point, you know, within this sector and within this industry, is because our competition isn't, I need to take your business, I need to take your customers. It's like we all need to grow, and there's so much space for us to move into and that's going to be one of the big drivers, I think, of how.
So on that point, actually, tours and activities is now already emerging as the reason why people want to travel. They're not traveling because they want to stay at a Hilton or they want to take Finnair.
Yeah, but that's that comes down to the experience.
Yes,
right?
correct.
And I think as you move down that value chain, I think we've had this discussion before. Half joking, my perfect airline experience would be turning up to check-in, checking my bags in, like being knocked out completely, not having anything to do with the actual experience of getting onto a plane. Just like I'm asleep, wheel me in, like stack me high, and then I just wake up at the other end of the,
Absolutely,
the
yeah.
other end of it. That's it. Well, yeah.
You have a market
But
segment
the
there.
reality
Yeah.
is, this part of the industry is where the rubber meets the road in terms of, being able to experience culture, being able to really genuinely experience the destination.
best part of travel.
It's the best part of travel. And there's so much to gain from that. So I'll shut up now.
So to kind of piggyback on this theme of like growing the whole pie and how you're attracting different sorts of customers, I'm curious to hear from you a little bit more about Expedia's model. I think we all hear a lot about TripAdvisor and know that they get so much of their business through the review side of things. So I'm curious to know, I guess, what Expedia's model is for kind of funneling customers into tours and activities, and also how the Expedia customers differ from the TripAdvisor customers, maybe.
I get nervous for some reason. Be honest, right? I just had a total mind blank. What was your first question?
So how you acquire those customers
and
funnel them into tours and activities,
Yeah.
and then how you're different in terms of how your customers differ from TripAdvisors.
Yeah, sure. So we have lots of different ways to book at Expedia. So we have 60, 70 different brands. Some examples of that would be in Australia we have What If, we have hotels.com, we have what we call Brand Expedia, which has 50 different points of sale, targeting Japanese customers, targeting Australian customers, US customers, which is traditionally the sort of bigger part of Expedia's business. We're an American company. But really, it's about the hundreds of millions of people that travel with us and our ability to attach an activity to that. So, and really our focus over the next 12 months is connecting up their trip. So Expedia customers today are coming to us and buying flights and hotels, and we have hundreds of different ways that we try and merchandise activities. So an example would be things like I booked my flight from London to come here to Berlin. As I was going through and I'd selected my hotel and flight, I will be recommended specific activities to do based on the data of that customer, as well as ground transportation. So we also sell airport transfers because they're two things that we know at some point the customer's going to have to try and figure out. The challenge is what you were saying before. It's like getting them to take that seriously, getting them to understand that you might be in a city for 48 hours. Do you really want to spend 2 hours of that waiting in a line to get into a museum? And that's something that you need to pre-book.
Yeah.
There's sort of a last minute, 80% of the sales are offline because people are arriving in destination and then trying to make those decisions. That's where little triggers in, if they're an Expedia customer, triggers like last minute booking windows is a really controversial topic in terms of allowing somebody to go on a guided tour in Toulouse and book that from 10 minutes or 1 hour from now. Operationally really challenging for us. We know we've got those customers and we're trying to figure out how to promote that. So mobile apps, package path, we have some really unique things with Expedia, which one example is called member only deals. So you have to be a qualified Expedia customer to activate special prices and special privileges. We have a VIP sort of program on the Expedia lodging side when you're buying a hotel, and there's more and more that we're doing to try and bring value to the customer. Our core is to make sure that customer comes back to us and buys again. That's very different potentially to your business as an example, because that customer is maybe coming to Toulouse once a year if you're lucky and buying with you, but there's a possibility they may never book again. So our point is all about the customer, getting them to come back to us and for us to give them a connected trip and make that relevant. In terms of your second question, in all honesty, I'm not sure on the data on that. So in terms of TripAdvisor and Expedia and how we differ, we're a full service OTA. There's a lot of data and a lot of research that we publish online in terms of the demographics, different countries, what type of people are buying activities. We do a lot of research and spend a lot of time studying our customer and understanding at what phase are they in a discovery phase, or what phase are they really looking to book with us. So key differentiator is that we have a lot of customers that are buying well in advance because they're attaching an activity to a flight and hotel, and that's a really important point that a lot of partners really value, because we can start to put 5 customers on that scheduled departure daily, and then you can start to figure out your distribution strategy, and a part of that's direct, a part of that's somebody walking up to you on the day of travel, but we're sort of, we're a good partner to work with to give you advanced sales through the whole sort of process, but that's one example.
How important is it because everybody is selling the destination and wants to get customers, but how important is it to have one step back and have the quality assurance by having certified guides or trained professionals, suppliers that are not mixing your whole experience that you're promising up? How important is that? I hear nothing about
Super
that.
important. When you work with Expedia, we have an onboarding process where we go through and we sign agreements,
Mm-hmm.
and there's lots of restrictions around that. We check that you're a licensed guide, as an example. It's a really complicated topic because there's lots of different regulations in different countries around the world.
Absolutely.
But we have quite a stringent process in terms of listing. So we really care about that.
Okay.
And then there's a sort of moderation and process where we're getting feedback from our customers. Things go wrong. So we have a team constantly looking at that and reviewing if there's optimizations needed that we can work with our partners to make their products better, or in the worst case scenario that they don't fit to sell on our system because they may not have the right qualifications.
Is there a preview on your website, like how you want to have them signed up and certified?
Yeah, we've got lots of information online. I'm happy to share that.
Fantastic.
We use a review system on our guides also. 3 complaints against that tour, it's delisted on.
Yeah, that's the way I work myself. I work for Americans only, 3 times non-excellent.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm still on.
One of the things I wanted to add, sort of build from what we've been saying, is that it is changing. I think we were sort of saying before, it's changing every day. The biggest power that you've got is yourselves and the networks to share, because we're all trying to solve the same problems. It'd be great for everybody in this room to work with both of our partners, but that may not be relevant to you. So you're the only one that can answer that. You might talk to a partner who's getting great value out of Expedia, and you may talk to one that is not. So it depends on what type of product you have, where you're operating. Is that a focus area for us? There's lots of information that we can give you, but it's really about creating networks. I see some great things in like local destinations or in certain categories. You see attractions, hop on and off companies coming together, walking tour category companies sort of swapping notes. I might offer a food tour in Toulouse and somebody else in Glasgow, I think you said. So you're a great power for each other, right? Because you've got a very special distribution where you're looking to help people understand food in your local market. That's very different to key attractions or hop on and off tour as an example. So,
one thing I want to just jump in on also on last minute, because Chris was mentioning 80% is last minute, often offline, and Dom mentioned like the OTAs are trying to drive more last minute bookings. So that's something that you guys can influence, right? Like it's good that everybody's on a res tech system, but if you don't automate your business, if you have to have a cutoff the night before so that you can print something out so you can give it to your driver who doesn't want to use the mobile app, right? Then that's a manual process, and that's basically something that's preventing these last minute customers who actually would love to go on your tour, but just don't know about it, right? The OTAs can't target them, they can't drive that booking to you, right? So anything that you can do to automate your business actually helps also to get these last minute customers. And also mobile, right? If your website is mobile optimized, that's not good enough, because mobile people basically on their phone, they're in destination, right? They want to book. Mobile customers are usually last minute customers, right? So your website has to be mobile optimized, but you also need to be able to actually allow last minute bookings. So just think about sort of what are these manual steps? How can you remove them as much as possible so that you can take up to the last minute a customer?
Yeah, because the thing I would add to that, sorry, is just when you look at the travellers and their behaviours, you know, people talk about the OTAs wanting to get that booking, you know, early when the flight is made. I don't want to decide what day I want to go to the zoo until the start of the week, and I see what the weather's like, or I know how the kids have travelled, or I worked out when my friend's around to see him. You know, so it's a human behaviour as part of the traveller wanting to have. We talked about it. I'm going to be showing the photos of my experiences. I want them to be the best they want to be. So I want that flexibility. So I don't think it's going to change, and so you need to change or enable me as the traveller to make that booking, and therefore, so cut-off rates. You know, making sure that you're helping these guys, and I think, you know, maybe you'll talk about it more, but you know, the app, you know, how your app helps that in destination, because there's two 80% that are a bit confusing. 80% is offline, so that can still be a phone booking 6 months before, but 80% is in destination. So that's, you know, in those last handful of days, even shorter, probably 48 hours for nearly half of it, that booking's being made. And it's, if you can enable that easier and easier, then you're going to work better with the OTAs that are probably, you know, getting that ability alongside your, you know, the concierge up the road, or whoever it might be, that local agent. Those are going to be the agents that help you get that last booking and mean that you know, that boat leaves full rather than with, you know, 8 spare seats on it.
We're going to do it, so just behind you.
In their mind, maybe having some ideas of what they want to do, maybe searching something and then booking it. But to your point about people wanting curated experiences, and you're talking about targeting with data, you're basing so much of that on maybe their search words or what they clicked on and those types of things. But I think a lot of people are exploring, they don't really know. And I'm wondering about the future of booking, if you can curate it in a much more targeted way by asking the people coming to your site for information about themselves and saying, hey, take this short survey. What are you interested in? I love food, I love wine, I love X, Y, and Z. And then the search is much more targeted and specific to that individual instead of kind of a blanket search based on click rates and other things. And I just wonder if that would also increase booking rates, because then people are all of a sudden getting things that are really specific to them, interesting to them, and the kind of things that they really want to experience when they're traveling. So I'm just wondering if you guys also know of any companies that are doing that right now, or if there's any plans to integrate something like that into the services.
Google knows everything about you, Facebook knows everything about you.
They make assumptions. They make so many assumptions based on click rates and things. It's not necessarily you telling them exactly what you want to experience.
They know better you than yourself.
Well, that's probably when you look at the algorithms for how they're targeting, they're basing on maybe percentages. Like they're most likely to convert when they click on X, Y, and Z. But yeah, to your.
I think for us, what I would add, as